Christmas is here, so let's talk about some Christmas films. One of the most iconic parts of Christmas is its many movies, which includes many animated classics. But what is a Christmas film without a Christmas villain? With so many iconic animated Christmas films, we want to know which of the villains deserve the bottom spot on the naughty list. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Animated Christmas Villains, Nice to Naughty. As usual, we'll be starting with the most noble character and working our way down to the most evil. The Christmas villains in this category are the good. Taking the gold medal of good is Steve Claus from Arthur Christmas. Steve is an interesting case because while he's a major antagonist in the film, he serves the role of an anti-hero more than a villain. He is the grandson of Grand Santa and a descendant of the original Santa, St. Nicholas. He is the next in line to become Santa after his father, Malcolm. In the meantime, he was head of mission control during his father's missions.
Good morning, Gwen. Ho ho, etc.
Steve grew annoyed at his father's continued time as Santa, and he wished to take up the mantle already. He takes his job very seriously despite it not being his dream, and this leads to him becoming antagonistic. Steve is not a bad guy, just jealous and wishing he was above his station, which leads to him being the COO at the end of the movie. Taking the silver medal of good is the Grinch from Illumination's 2018 Grinch. This version of the Grinch features a lot of similar ideas and plot points to the original, but due to a lot of unique differences, we'll be separating them. The Grinch is a grouchy outcast who lives up on a mountain far away from Whoville because he seems to despise the Whos. However, unlike other versions of this character, he makes consistent trips into town and the Whos try to be friendly towards him. This eventually leads to his plan to steal Christmas, due to its noisy nature and general good vibes which he seems to dislike.
It's go time.
The Grinch's main issue is the fact that his heart is 2 sizes too small, and by the end of the film this is fixed and he becomes less evil. The Grinch isn't that bad of a guy in this adaptation, and in fact he's much less malicious than his other counterparts. And his eventual heart transformation lands him right here at the top of this category with the silver medal of good. Taking our bronze medal of good is Ebenezer Scrooge from Disney's 2009 The Christmas Carol. While Scrooge is the protagonist of the film, he is also a villain for the majority of it. The reason we're focusing on the Jim Carrey version is because not only is it one of the only animated versions, but it's an accurate representation of the book. Scrooge is a miserable old man whose stinginess knows no bounds. He continually denies money to people, including charities, and this gets to the point where he even steals the coins on Jacob Marley's corpse. He is severely hated, and it shows because of his pure stinginess throughout the film. Scrooge does have a very iconic change of heart after seeing his past, present, and future, thanks to the ghosts throughout the night. And his change of heart is so iconic that it's no surprise that he ranks here. Next up, we return to the Grinch, this time from the original book and cartoon. The original version of the Grinch shares a lot in common with his newer versions. A green outcast who lives high upon a mountain outside Whoville. In the original cartoon, he's shown to be a being of nearly pure hatred, who hates noise, singing, and even other people. This leads to his literal war on Christmas, where he does everything he can to stop the Whos from enjoying their Christmas and their presents. The Grinch goes into everyone's homes and steals everything Christmas related, and even lies to children. However, by the end of the film, he too has a change of heart, which is a common trend in Christmas movies, as his heart grows 3 sizes. This leads to him becoming a relatively good guy, even happily feasting with the Whos. However, unlike the other Grinch, he is shown to be much more malicious and his backstory leads to him being much less likable. Rounding out the good section of our list, the Bumble from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is next. The Bumble, otherwise known as the Abominable Snow Monster of the North, is a Sasquatch-esque creature that exists in the North Pole. He appears mostly as a myth that is told to Rudolph on his journey, where he's portrayed as an evil and hungry monster. However, the truth is that he's a relatively peaceful creature that mostly just mills around and survives. He does appear to be evil and roars angrily on multiple occasions. However, this turns out to be because he's dealing with a massively annoying and downright torturous toothache. The Bumble isn't bad, just in pain, and while he's angry, he never harms anyone directly. With the good characters wrapped up, we now move into neutral territory. These characters fall in the gray area. Starting out the gray area is Mr. White Christmas himself, Snow Miser from The Year Without a Santa Claus. Snow Miser was a protector and friend to the Santa Claus family, and he constantly protected them from his brother Heat Miser. This means that during Santa's year off, he failed to protect some of the elves who tried to pick up the slack. When Mrs. Claus pops around to try and convince Snow Miser to bring snow to Southtown, Snow Miser fights with his brother Heat Miser on multiple occasions, and this leads to them being disciplined by their mother, Mother Nature. Snow Miser is the better of the two brothers because he does do a lot to protect Santa and company. Moving on, next is Burgermeister Meisterburger from Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Meisterburger is the mayor of Sombertown, a place where he rules with an iron fist. He has outlawed most forms of fun, but especially toys. He even goes as far as trying to destroy any and all toys in the region. He tries to imprison Kris Kringle for giving out toys, and he even seems to give off the impression that he'd be fine with the man's death if it came to be.
I will set a trap for that bothersome Kringle.
Meisterburger even marks the Kringle family as wanted criminals, and the only reason he doesn't rank any lower is because while he has power, he doesn't do anything truly evil with it. Next up is Heat Miser from The Year Without a Santa Claus. Heat Miser is the brother of Snow Miser and the son of Mother Nature, where he controls heat for a living. He's much more openly antagonistic than his brother, and this leads him to nearly kill Jingle and Jangle because Snow Miser failed to protect them. The reason he ranks lower than his brother is because his anger causes him to get almost homicidal at some points, and as such, he's much less forgivable. Sure, the other films he appears in makes him much more likable, but this doesn't stop him from being an all-around jerk everywhere else. And rounding out our gray area is Cousin Melanie Spankenheimer from Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Melanie Spankenheimer, or Cousin Mel, is the cousin of the main character and the niece of the titular grandma. In this film, she's trying to get the family to sell the store they've been running for a long time. This is because she's a gold digger who only seems to care about money, doing whatever she can to obtain it from people around her. This gets to the point where she uses fruitcake to cause a reindeer to trample Grandma, and then tries to sue Santa because of it. She spends most of the movie as a manipulative schemer, and this causes her to be a genuine menace throughout the film. With our gray area complete, we now enter the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Starting out the bad to evil section is a pairing, Mr. Ellingbo and Mrs. Crumb from Claus. Ellingbo and Crumb are the patriarch and matriarch of the Ellingbo and Crumb families respectively. They're the heads of their families and are supposedly the ones who drummed up the rivalry in the first place. The two of them hate each other and want to destroy the other family, no matter what the cost. However, once peace seems to be brewing between the families, they spend their time trying to destroy Claus and Jesper's gift-giving empire, creating a truce that they hate. The two of them have to eventually get along because a Romeo and Juliet situation happens where they become in-laws. They are very bad people no matter how you slice it, but the worst thing they've done is try to frame Jesper. Next is Professor Hinkle from Frosty the Snowman. Hinkle was a magician who was really bad at magic, often breaking eggs and disappointing audiences for the most part. Hinkle had a magic hat that brings Frosty to life, and he spends most of the film trying to obtain the hat, and as such, kill Frosty. He even gets close to child murder at a couple points, but thankfully it never gets that far. Hinkle is also shown to be kind of childish as he throws a tantrum upon being tricked, and even falls down a mountain thanks to his actions. Hinkle tries to kill Frosty multiple times just to obtain this hat that he didn't seem to care about beforehand. Sure, he has a redeeming scenario during the credits, but it's not enough because all he did was write an apology for repeated attempted murder. Bagging our bronze medal of evil is the big burlap bug boy, Oogie Boogie, from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Oogie Boogie is one of the residents of Halloween Town and takes up a spot as the Boogeyman. He used to be responsible for the holiday known as Bug Day, and as such used to be the king of Halloween Town. During the movie, he's been banished to live under the town in a home he built death traps around. He has his minions, Lock, Shock, and Barrel, kidnap Santa Claus and bring him to Oogie's death trap at home. He then tortures the kidnapped man and pretty much uses him as bait for Jack Skellington and Sally. He then tries to murder all three of them during their fight. He's later killed for everything he did, and his bug hive mind is destroyed. Oogie would fall lower, but the stuff he did is actually surprisingly tame compared to our bottom two. Snatching the silver medal of evil is King Herod from The Star. King Herod, better known as Herod the Great, was the king of Israel during the biblical times the movie takes place in. He only has about 10 minutes of screen time, but he is the one ordering around the hunter who acts as the more obvious antagonist.
Get rid of the problem.
Herod sends the hunter to kill Mary and her soon-to-be-born child because he thought that the child would be bad for his rule. This means he's more than okay with political murder, if need be, which is very bad no matter how you slice it. Herod even threatens to kill all children across his kingdom just so he could make sure Jesus would be dead. If he had more screen time, it means he'd probably be even worse. But as it stands, his threats to murder babies just to stay in power makes him a massive villain, but he's still somehow outclassed by the worst of the worst. Finally, grabbing the gold medal of evil, is the other boogeyman on our list, Pitch Black from Rise of the Guardians. Pitch Black is one of the many creatures who are physical representations of holiday spirit. Specifically, Pitch Black is the creature known as the Boogeyman and the Nightmare King, a creature who scares children and brings about nightmares. His job is to scare the children and become even more powerful with the children's belief. This leads to him trying to turn all of the children's belief, or guardians like Santa, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy, into belief for him. He does this by ruining Easter and kidnapping all of the Tooth Fairies, leading to them being unable to do their job. He even tries to corrupt Jack Frost into joining his side inside of the Guardians of Childhood. He got to the point where he even managed to corrupt the Sandman's dreams into his titular nightmares. Pitch is by far the worst villain on this list, because he is unabashedly evil and cares about little more than his own powers. And with our morality spectrum complete, let's wrap things up by handing out some Sinner medals. The Darwin medal goes to Professor Hinkle, who is by far the dumbest villain on this list. He's clumsy and little more than a childish magician. Earning our Envy medal is Oogie Boogie, who had his role as king of Halloween Town taken, and as such is intensely envious of Jack in his position, so much so that he dies because of it. We decided to give the Greed medal to Cousin Mel, who spends the movie as a gold digger and trying to obtain money in any way she can from the supposedly failing store. The Wrath medal goes to the Heat Miser, whose anger is so immense he tries to shoot down the Arbiter of Good, Santa Claus, on multiple occasions. Finally, the Pride medal goes to Steve Claus, whose entire character arc is about the fact that he believes he should be the new Santa, even though his father is still doing it, and that pride does take center stage for his character. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what your favorite animated Christmas movie is. Make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, Merry Christmas.